Is the economy as bad as we are hearing on the news?
That's a bit like asking a guy who works in the morgue to talk to you about public health. I only see companies that have failed. New Zealand is going through a period of sustained economic decline.
3,023 companies have closed in the last year, according to Centrix. Is it the economy or is it bad decisions by the companies?
The peak in insolvency numbers, they are driven by a number of factors, but one of the things that's driving them is statistically companies have to fail. And so you can put the best person in charge of a company and that company will still fail if circumstances are going against it. There's just an inbuilt natural redundancy. That's the base level of insolvency that you tend to see.
Damien Grant.
He's the man New Zealand businesses meet when their business goes under.
And he says it is not the economy that's killing companies.
What are the one mistake that real good, honest business owners are making?
99% of the people who fail are men. Men are not 99% of business owners. We get to the end of the road and we should stop, but we don't because our identity is fused with our business. You are losing part of your identity. It's a form of psychic death. The level of insolvencies that we are seeing is almost exclusively has been driven by the...
Google actually told me that if I'm going to have you on the podcast, I'm going to have to expect some highly energetic, unfiltered, and deeply opinionated conversation.
So this is why you shouldn't rely on AI.
Is that true?
No, I'm very boring. I'm uninteresting. I live a secluded, quiet life without opinions.
I don't believe that. So you're one of the New Zealand's most prominent licensed insolvency practitioners.
Not necessarily the best one.
Well,
just the most prominent. Just the most effective at self-promotion.
Very. And I am having you today because I'm very fascinated about the recent stats. The 3,023 companies have closed in the last year, according to Centrix. And a lot of them have come from a certain sector. And I want to understand the nuances of that, you being such an expert in that space, and where does the economy play in those things? And just sort of dive deeper. So you would have a view of the economy that is very different from everybody else. And is the economy as bad as we are hearing on the news?
That's a bit like asking a guy who works in the morgue to talk to you about public health. I only see companies that have failed. So that's my perspective, right? Yep. I'm like a dentist. You ask a dentist about teeth, all he sees or she sees is rotting teeth. But if you take a lens back, so if I take off my insolvency practitioner's hat and you have a look at the wider economic numbers, New Zealand is going through a period of sustained economic decline, and the peak in insolvency numbers, they are driven by a number of factors, but one of the things that's driving them is the Inland Revenue Department. So the Inland Revenue Department is by and large the largest creditor in New Zealand. They've got about $9 billion that's currently outstanding. They're not very good at collecting that money, but when they do decide to put the foot on the accelerator, they push a lot of companies into liquidation. And so, for example, in 2020 and 21 and even 22, the number of insolvencies was very low. That doesn't mean that the economy was doing very well. That simply means that the Inland Revenue Department, for political reasons, wasn't collecting any debt. Now they are, and we're seeing a spike in insolvency numbers. But if you want to see how the economy is going, there are better metrics than insolvency.
So is it the economy or is it bad decisions by the companies?
Capitalism is fantastic. It is the best system ever devised by man. But for capitalism to work, for every Rocket Labs, you are going to have 1,000 companies start, and you might get one Rocket Labs, or probably more. For every 100,000 companies that start, you'll get one star. If you have 100 companies that start, we know statistically there's going to be 10 will do really well, 80 will do between terrible and good, and 10 will fail. Statistically, companies have to fail. And so you can put the best person in charge of a company and that company will still fail if circumstances are going against it. So you might have a company that, let's say the company's in the business of making wagon wheels, right? The best guy in the world. You could put Elon Musk in charge of that company and it's still not going to work because the market has gone against it. So companies fail for all sorts of reasons. A lot of the time companies fail simply because they've run out of time. The time and tide has moved against it. And often that is a male-driven thing. I'm a guy. I identify my identity with my business. Business goes really well in my 30s and 40s. Now I'm in my 50s and 60s and I'm not prepared to let it go. And so eventually the business runs out of legs. I'm doing the same thing I was doing 20 years ago, but now there's somebody younger and better who's cutting my lunch. Those companies tend to fail. So there's just an inbuilt natural redundancy, and that's the base level of insolvency that you tend to see.
Is that happening more so now?
No, I don't think it's happening more so now. I think, like I said, the level of insolvencies that we are seeing is almost exclusively has been driven by the Inland Revenue Department. So the IRD is cracking down on outstanding debtors, and that is forcing companies into liquidation. There are other bigger problems with the New Zealand economy, but the level of insolvencies is a function of what the IRD is doing.
So technically Inland Revenue is not. Inland Revenue is, by the way, for American viewers,
it's like their tax office, like the IRS. Yeah.
They're not closing the businesses.
They are. They totally are. So let's say I'm sitting I'm a debt collection officer at the Inland Revenue Department. I've got 1,000 files to look at, and so I've got 1,000 companies that owe tax. I will attempt to manage them as best I can. If I don't have any luck, I will say, right, that company there is not paying its tax. I'm going to start legal proceedings to get rid of that company. And the company will either pay its tax or it will go into liquidation. And it can go into liquidation either because the company itself says, fine, we can't pay our tax, we're going to shut down, or the courts can on petition of the IRD shut it down. So the IRD is absolutely driving those companies into liquidation. And you see there's a very high profile a couple of years ago, a company called SPQR, which was a restaurant in Ponsonby. And this particular company had not paid tax for a number of years, and it went into liquidation owing the IRD, I'm going to say $2 million, but it was of that order. It was a lot of money. So this is a classic situation where, when I was saying in 2020 and 21, 22, the IRD was doing nothing. So you had companies like SPQR not paying any tax. All of the restaurants around SPQR were paying that, or presumably were paying their tax.
Right.
Here you've got one taxpayer not doing anything. Finally, the Inland Revenue Department gets off their whatever and decide to do something. Then they tip over the taxpayer owing millions of bucks. And we see that a lot. So that is what is driving, like I said, a lot of these insolvency numbers.
Why is IRD being so onto it now?
They're not. They're a government department. They're not at all onto it. They are grotesquely inefficient. It appalls me to have to agree with anything that the Greens are saying, but the Greens want to put $15 million, what was it, 150, I can't remember, into funding the IRD to proceed with enforcement. But the Inland Revenue Department is they are a government department. The key word here is department. They've got $9 billion outstanding on the books, according to the latest annual report. It doesn't really make a lot of difference to them how much money they collect. They're a government department. I mean, who cares? So they're just not very good. The New Zealand tax system is entirely based on voluntary compliance. If you want to pay your tax, great. If you don't want to pay your tax, eventually the Inland Revenue Department will get around to catching up with you, but they're not very good.
So I was wanting to ask you a question here on what do you see on the ground? Kind of touched on a little bit, but what have you been seeing on the ground in terms of the kind of work that you're doing, being asked to do, asked to step in and take charge of some, would I say, high-profile cases?
Let's not talk about the high-profile
whatever
cases.
You can talk about.
We're currently involved in a couple of high-profile cases, but it's what are we seeing on the ground? Probably the two biggest areas that continue to struggle is construction and hospitality. Okay. construction really was hammered about 23, 24, not so much now. That was really a function of inflation. So in New Zealand, construction is kind of be based on fixed term contracts, fixed price contracts. So I will build you a house for $1 million. And that's a fixed price. And so people were signing these contracts in 2018 and 2019. Then in 2020, 2021, there was a spike in inflation. So we saw a whole raft of construction companies get caught out by that and fall over. That's kind of resolved itself now. We've also seen a lot of construction, a bit of a boom in construction thanks to resource consents becoming easier to issue and so forth. But we're still seeing a lot of shakeout in construction. The other issue, two other issues, hospitality and retail. So people are just spending less. Interest rates are going up, less disposable income. Unemployment's kind of not going anywhere, but people are a little bit nervous. The war in Iran hasn't helped because it's chipped into people's disposable income. So discretionary spending is down, which hurts hospitality and retail. So those are the sectors that are kind of getting whacked.
Hello, thanks for watching this video. Quick note, have you subscribed? Over 90% of people who are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or on Apple are not subscribed or following. Please do so now. It's so simple. The button will be around the screen somewhere. You either hit subscribe or hit the follow button or leave me a review. It will help me so much, helps me grow as a channel and support my work. So I really appreciate it. Okay, back to the episode. So when the tax bill can't be paid, what does a business owner need to do? When you can't pay.
Call me.
Really? Is that what they need to do?
There are options. So if you can't pay your tax, if your business is losing money and you can't pay your tax, shut it down. Just go and do something else. Because if you can't pay your tax and you're losing money, you don't have a business. But if a very common situation is for people to get into business or their business is going well and then they have a quiet patch, as it happened in COVID, and then the business now moves back into the black. So now, okay, great, we ran a restaurant, it was doing really well in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, terrible years, but now they're back in the black, but they're carrying all of this legacy debt from the past. The Companies Act has 3 or 4 really powerful tools to help those companies come out the other side. But if you want to do that, those company directors need to talk to their accountants and their lawyers and then go and talk to an insolvency practitioner. 2 times out of 3, we can save those companies. If the companies are actually trading at a profit or break even now, a lot of the times we see companies that are trading at a loss can't pay their tax and still want to be saved. And in that situation, they just have to shut down.
The line that you don't cross, so is you can't hide from IRD. That's like the worst thing that you can do. You can't not pay your tax. But if
that's not true. That's you can. It is a criminal offence in New Zealand not to account for PAY. It's pay as you earn. So if you're employing staff and you don't pay that staff member, so let's say you pay the staff member $1,000, 700 goes to the staff member, 300 goes to the Commissioner of Inland Revenue Department. If you don't pay that $300 to the Commissioner, that is a crime under the Tax Administration Act. It's not often enforced, but nonetheless, it's a criminal offence. Having said that, if you don't pay other forms of tax, income tax, GST, fringe benefits tax, and so forth, the IID is they're owed money like everybody else, right? For a lot of taxes, there's no difference in the IID and the bank, the electricity company, the insurance company, whoever it is, for the insurance premiums. If your company is in a situation where it is now trading profitably, but there is historical debt, then there are tools under the Companies Act where insolvency practitioners can help those companies restructure. So I'm not saying when you get the letters from the IID, don't open them. Absolutely open them. But the problem is, what tends to happen is if you don't pay the landlord, you hear about it. If you don't pay the bank, you hear about it. If you don't pay your staff, they leave. If you don't pay the Inland Revenue Department, well, nothing happens the first month. And so company directors get lulled into, oh, well, I didn't pay the IID. Nothing happened. I didn't account for PAY or GST. Hey, that's pretty cool. And they think, I'll make it up in the next month. And to be fair, a lot of the time they do. People miss a payment and then they catch up the following months. Same with the landlord, whatever. Pretty common for small business. But with the Inland Revenue Department, the problem is that the debt escalates really quickly. So if you miss a payment on PAY GST, then they have what's called interest and penalties. So a $100 debt can become $200, can become $300 because it builds on itself. And so you miss 1 month, you might catch up the following month, but that month you didn't pay, the interest and penalties keep accruing on that. So it gets very ugly very fast. But then they should talk to their accountant or that.
So what are the one mistake that real good, honest business owners are making? Really hardworking ones that they're doing. I mean, the people that are going under, are they all like bad companies, bad actors, or actually really good, genuine business owners? They just didn't know what to do, didn't know how to ask for help, or are they too busy? Like, why? Like,
I don't know the answer to that question because, again, I only see the personality of those directors that fail. So,
right.
It's not like half the directors I see are left-handed. Left-handed people are 10%. Therefore, there's something about being left-handed in business that's a problem. I don't see that. I only see the people that I see have failed.
Yeah.
I can see traits in those people, but because I'm not looking, I'm only dealing with those that fail. I don't have a general sense. But there are a couple of observations that take them with a grain of salt, because like I said, I'm only seeing a cross-section of those that fail. So there's a selection bias coming into play. But 99% of the people who fail are men. Men are not 99% of business owners. And there's a couple of observations I would make for that. Men are more likely to go into business than women. That is true. Men are more likely to take risks than women. This is true. Because men are more likely to take risks, we're more likely to get in trouble, right? So which is why you see more men in prison and more billionaires become men, because we tend to operate at the extremes. Where men get into trouble, as I was saying before, where and this is a stereotype, but there's some truth to it. If you ask a guy, what do you do? He will tell you, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant, I am a teacher. Men identify with our professions. You ask a woman the same thing, what do you do? And she said, well, I teach at St. Kentigern's. I practice law at Kensington Swan, whatever it is. Again, it's a stereotype. It's not true in all cases. But if you are a guy and your business is selling widgets in Herne Bay, that your occupation and your identity kind of become fused, at least in your mind, not in the minds of those around you, certainly not necessarily in your family, but in your mind, the two become fused. And so when it comes time to sell or to close down your business, particularly if the business is shutting down, you are losing part of your identity. It's a form of psychic death. And so when I am dealing with a guy, and particularly somebody my age, and I'm guilty of this too, right? So I identify I am a liquidator, right? So when they drag me out of there in a pine box, I'm going to struggle emotionally with the fact that I'm no longer doing that thing, because that's how I identify with myself. But often what happens is we get to the end of the road and we should stop, but we don't, because our identity is fused with our business.
Right.
And that is probably responsible for a disproportionate number of business failures, where company directors should sell out, they should get their staff involved, they should sell the business or just close the business down and do something else. but we don't want to do that.
Quick one. If you're an established business owner who already knows podcast guesting is one of the smartest moves for your business, you want to be on podcasts, but you're too busy. You don't know what to pitch, how to pitch, what to say once you're on the microphone, and you just need some help. I made something for you. It's called 3 Free Podcasts. I will personally send you 3 shows your ideal clients are already listening to, plus exactly how to land a guest spot on each one. Simply go to powerfully.com/Mina, enter your details, a few questions about yourself, and then you will get the email. That is powerfully.com/Mina. Hello, thanks for watching this video. Quick note, have you subscribed? Over 90% of people who are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or on Apple are not subscribed or following. Please do so now. It's so simple. The button will be around the screen somewhere. You either hit subscribe or hit the follow button or leave me a review. It will help me so much, helps me grow as a channel and support my work. So I really appreciate it. Okay, back to the episode. There were 2 stats that you mentioned at the start, and I got the first one. The second one kind of confused me, and I felt like it was contradiction. Do you mind just going back to that? 99% of men are owning businesses?
No, of the
one that failed.
Of the companies that we see, we would liquidate 150, 180 companies a year. 1 or 2 of those will be run and owned by women. So... and that is anecdotally talking to other insolvency practitioners, that's what we see.
Right, okay.
The vast majority of companies that fail, that come to us, are run by men. Now, I don't know what percentage of companies are run by men and women, but it's much more than 1% of companies are run by women. Let's say it's 15, 20% of companies are run by women. It may even be higher now. Why are so few of those companies falling into the hands of insolvency practitioners? And there's 2 reasons, I suspect. No data on this. This is just anecdotal. Yeah. 1, women take less risks.
You just say that, yeah.
So they're less likely to do stupid things.
Like
borrow a whole bunch of money to open an office in Sydney and blow up, right? So women, again, it's a stereotype, but that's why, people like Elon Musk, that tends to be men that take these enormous risks in all aspects of life. And so we sit there and we'll take a leap into the unknown. And a lot of the time those leaps work, but sometimes they don't. And because men are more risk-seeking, their businesses fail more often. That's the first reason. The second reason is women when the business gets into trouble, there's 2 things kick into place. 1, much more likely to take advice. So it's like, okay, my business is now in trouble. I need to talk to somebody. And that's, this is why so many men die of preventable cancers, because we don't want to go and get help, right? We'd rather stick it out. So they get advice, and their advice is, you need to shut this business down. And so they shut the business down in an orderly way that avoids a liquidation. And so those are the kind of factors that I think is why more companies fail. But then again, you think of Rocket Labs, you think of Elon Musk, you think of Henry Ford, you think of Steve Jobs, whatever. The personality traits that goes to the casino and gambles everything on a $1 to $1 million billion shot tends to be men. And so for every Elon Musk that succeeds, there's probably 10,000 that fail. And so just because men are more risk-seeking, also stupid, because you think about the odds, right? What are the odds that you're the next Elon Musk? 1 in, I don't know, 1 billion, right? But we are so stupid that we think we're going to be that one. And so we go out there and we do it, and then we fail. And then it's like, oh, damn.
So I'm glad to hear that women are not showing up into your office as much.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that is a good thing. I mean, because Risk seeking, well, I mean, it's just horses for courses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are women out there who take big risks, and some of them succeed and make an awful lot of money. But we're just dealing in the averages. So, but we certainly see, and I've got a couple of high profile cases at the moment where women have gone into business, taken big risks, and they haven't paid off.
Care to share more details?
No.
Okay.
We'll talk offline.
Okay, sure. So off the record, but on the record, what other risks are people making that is causing them to show up at your office? And they're things that you can see right now happening, not necessarily like hypothetical or like big shots, but like actually what are they making mistakes right now? So people listening going, man, I'm in this situation. I might have been making that thing right now, but I will not do it.
The biggest mistake people in business make is not taking risks.
And yet risk is the thing that could help them show up at your office.
Yeah, I mean...
Funny enough. But yeah, so this is risk...
a timid heart never won fair maiden. If you want to... The mere fact you went into business means you have an appetite for risk. And being timid and sitting there on the corner, so you start a business and it's going well and it's ticking along. If you don't take any risk, it's never going to grow. It's never going to get anywhere. So the biggest mistake that I think people make in business is not take a risk. Mm-hmm. Take a risk. It might fail. So what?
Do you see the human side of the psychological aspect of and the emotional aspect? You talked about it being, identity, but getting over that experience, it's like, I feel like your experience of being a liquidator or insolvency is the opposite of someone being able to sell their business and make money out of it. Whereas in this case, this is the opposite end of the spectrum. They're losing it. They're losing the money. They've lost money maybe, and they've also lost the business because they couldn't make it work.
So I guess there's two types of people come into my business. One is they've got one business and they've got all their eggs in that one basket and it's failing. And that is emotionally very traumatic for those individuals. But we also see people who have their hands in half a dozen pies. So they've got 5 or 6 things on the go. That's pretty common. This one's not working. I'll kill that one, right? I mean, I've got 5 businesses. 2 are doing really well. 2 are doing okay. This one is dragging me down. So I'm going to kill that one and then put efforts into the ones that are working or ones could be improved. So not everybody who liquidates their business is in that situation. It's probably, and there's also, we see a lot of people who start a business, have a go, doesn't work, contracting business, giving advice, running a gardening store, contracting, whatever it is. Business isn't working. And it's like, okay, all right, I'm going to move to Australia now. I've given it 3 or 4 years. It's not working and I kill it. We do see quite a bit of that as well.
Yeah. So when someone is about to walk into your office, do they know that it's over? Or do you tell them?
Yeah, you don't. It's like, you call a dentist when you have a toothache. Really, we're that guy. So, yeah. What
prompts them to come to you? Not paying tax to the IRD or being told off by the IRD, by the landlord. Like, what prompts people to go, I need a liquidator? Or do they do that, or do you? I don't know. How does it work?
Most of it comes through. So they talk to their accountants or their lawyers more often than their lawyers.
Okay.
Accountants, I love accountants. They're great, but there's a very different mindset between an accountant and a lawyer. If you ring up your accountant and you say, I missed an IRD payment, or I missed whatever, the accountant will have a panic. Say, oh my goodness, you have to find some extra money and pay the debt. This is a crisis. You ring up your lawyer and you say, Bob, I've got a dead body in the boot of my car. The first thing your lawyer will say was, who else have you told? the lawyer will think about, oh, you haven't paid the tax. How can we solve this problem? Whereas an accountant, because the sort of people attracted to accountancy want to solve the problem. So most of the referrals we get come from accountants, come from lawyers, sorry.
From lawyers, not accountants.
From lawyers.
Okay.
So accountants want to solve a problem. Lawyers are more likely to think a little bit wider and think what maybe a way to look at it is an accountant will think, what should be done. A lawyer will think what can be done. So what can be achieved within the law. And likewise, when I said at the start, the Companies Act allows a wide range of options for company directors to salvage their companies. Lawyers tend to be more attuned to that and more comfortable dealing in that space. Again, it's a generalization. It's not always true. We do have accountants who refer us work, but it's not very common for somebody to approach an insolvency practitioner directly. Across the industry, it's more likely to be a referral from your professional advisor.
Okay, so typically will lawyers ringing you going, I
have a client
who's what?
In trouble, owes the RD some money, they want to shut down, they want to restructure. So that's the way the industry works. And that kind of makes sense, right? So you have a look at an insolvency firm. All of us in insolvency, we work very hard to build and maintain relationships with professional advisors, accountants, lawyers, bankers, etc. There's no way we're going to form relationships with the wider commercial public. There's just 500,000 companies trading. But there's, I think, about 30,000 chartered accountants and about 12,000 lawyers. So I will go out there and I'll build my network of 300-400 people, and so will the next insolvency practitioner will do the same. And so when you get into trouble, your accountant or lawyer will refer you to the insolvency practitioner. So that's where the leads come from.
And the conversation that you would have with the client or with the owner, what would be the questions that you ask them?
I don't really ask questions. I get them to, because it's their meeting, it's their time. I want them to tell me about their company and their business and their life.
And is that all that you do? And ask them, and then and then what do you decipher from the information? Typically, the pattern.
The first question is, do you want to keep trading or do you want to shut down?
If they don't know.
Yeah. If they don't know, it's generally the shutdown. But often I will simply start by saying, tell me a story. And it's up to them to decide what story they want to tell. And they already know, they've got the information. I want them to tell that story to us in their own words, in their own time. I've done this 1,000 times at this point. For most of the people who come in, it's the one and only time that they've done it. It's difficult, it's stressful, it's unpleasant. And so you want to give them the space to tell their story their own way. And a lot of the times they're very proud of what they've done with their business and the success they've had. They can be frustrated about things that have gone wrong. And so it's in the process of letting them tell that story that you can then start to think about, where are they at? What's the status that they're in? Another big clue is, did they bring in their spouse or significant other? That's telling.
Why is that?
Because quite often, if they haven't, then they haven't told their wife. And so they are telling me before they tell their spouse, and they want to know what their options are, what their choice. So when they go back and they have that conversation with their partner, because it's easier to tell these sort of things to a stranger than it is to tell it, because when you go home and you say, oh, I'm going to lose the business, that is going to change the way that she looks at you. And that's hard, and it's a really hard thing for a guy to wrap his head around. So letting him tell that tell that conversation to me first and tell it in his own words, in his own way. And then it's like, okay, because then I tell them what their options are. So they can close the business down, they can attempt to restructure, they can sell it, whatever it is. Then allowing that, because it's their business, it's not mine. I didn't build it. I haven't poured blood, sweat and tears into making it. It's their business. And then then they know the options, and we've got some booklets and whatever, then they can think about it. But also, what are the risks, right? Because if they haven't paid the tax in 2 years, well, you got a problem, right? Because if you haven't paid your PAYE, your pay-as-you-earn employer contribution, that's a crime. Now, okay, on the books, it's a serious crime. In reality, the IRD doesn't always prosecute it. But at the point that they're in, they need to stop digging because they're already in trouble. And so giving them the information and then allowing them to decide where to go. It is very easy to push people in various directions. But if they're not at the point they want to shut the business down, you don't want to kind of manipulate them into closing it down. They've got to be comfortable with the process, and generally they are. The other thing to do sometimes is you actually want the spouse to come in at some point, because it's a really difficult thing. Not in all cases, so I'm only maybe talking about 20% of the cases here, right? But for a lot of those individuals, it's a really traumatic experience, and you want to have that. You want to know that they've got the support network around them. Like I said, that is the majority of cases. A lot of people come in there and say, "Yeah, I gave it a go, it didn't work, whatever."
Oh, okay.
Shut it down and move on, right? That is the vast majority of people I see. Right.
Okay. Well, what do they say? Restructure, or I want to keep going. What does that look like?
Yeah, I want to keep going. I mean, you got a podcast here. It's going well. You spent some time and effort into it. Let's say something goes wrong, and you have some ugly financial hits, and oh my God, I've suddenly got to pay this $300,000 bill. But other than that, the podcast business is going really well. You're making revenue. You got lots of views, but now I've got this terrible bill. What do I do? So it's like, okay, so I would ask you the question, what do you want to do? And you say, well, no, I don't want to shut it down. I put all this time and effort into building it up. Well, okay, first thing we need to understand is that your business is separate from the limited liability company that sits underneath it. So can we take this business that's working out of the limited liability company that might owe this $300,000 debt somewhere else? Sometimes we can't. Sometimes the business and the company are completely intertwined and they can't be untangled and it's a shutdown. But sometimes you can say, okay, we've got this company that's got all of this legacy debts and whatever, it's got something that's gone wrong. We can then move this business into a new entity. And a classic example, and this has happened on a number of occasions. So you've got a small business, printing company, whatever, and they've got one large client. So 80% of the revenue is this one big client, and the client misses a month, doesn't pay one bill. Well, they're a big client, we'll keep them happy, and then they miss the third bill. And then they miss and now all of a sudden, and then your largest client goes into liquidation or receivership. So now you're suddenly thinking, okay, even without that client, I've still got a good business, but I now owe the IRD money, I owe my printing supplier money, I've got all of these debts, but I have a good business. In that situation, would it be possible to take that small printing business out from the company that now have all of these ugly debts? Sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't. And if we can, well then, that, and the Companies Act has a whole raft of processes that allows that to happen. Like I said, 2 times out of 3, we can save the company, but only if the restructured company is profitable. You don't want to, if the company is losing money, well, then there's no point in restructuring. And also if the company, the other thing is the mindset of the company director. Restructuring your company is hard work.
Is it?
You have to go around there to a lot of your customers and suppliers and say, Yep, I owe you $20,000. That money is owed by the old company, which is now in liquidation, right? I want to keep dealing with you in the future. Okay, that's an ugly conversation. And you've got to convince that supplier, yep, I'm going to support you going forward. It's hard. It's tough. It's not an easy thing to do. And if you're going to go through that restructuring process, you've got to be, we won't put somebody through that unless we're confident that they have the resilience to actually go down that path.
Hello, thanks for watching this video. Quick note, have you subscribed? Over 90% of people who are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or on Apple are not subscribed or following. Please do so now. It's so simple. The button will be around the screen somewhere. You either hit subscribe or hit the follow button or leave me a review. It will help me so much, helps me grow as a channel and support my work. So I really appreciate it. Okay, back to the episode. So fascinating, this conversation. I would love to keep talking, but I will finish it at this point here and say, what's your final thoughts about what would you tell a business owner who's made one bad decision and is panicking about it right now?
Talk to their lawyer, a commercial lawyer. Find a commercial lawyer that you trust and talk to them. Don't go rushing off talking to an insolvency practitioner, because we are like dentists. I've used this joke before, forgive me. But if you go to a dentist, they're going to recommend a root canal because that's why they make the most money. That's been unfair to dentists, but you get the idea. If you come to an insolvency practitioner, we will probably just recommend liquidation because that's all we know. That is the entire extent of our toolkit. A commercial lawyer may well look at that situation and come up with solutions that I wouldn't think of because my focus is just on that. But if you've got one bad decision, talk to a commercial lawyer who you trust.
Thanks, Damien. It's been great to have you on the podcast. It's
pleasure.
Before we end, actually, I would love to ask, where can people find you, learn more about you?
On Sunday at Stuff every week. There's 850 words of wisdom, and they can find me there or on X. Although I only really post my columns or my running pics, which is not very pretty.
Running pics, that's great. Well, if you want to watch, look at Damien running, go to X or be entertained by his riding. There's a podcast called Different Matters. Yeah, you've got a podcast.
Which is, it's, I interview authors, which I do to entertain myself rather than, clicks. But, yep, there it is.
There we go. If you enjoy authors' conversations, go to
Different Matters.
Different Matters. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Pleasure. Thanks.